The moment the CEO reached out and fixed the single father's crooked collar, time seemed to slow, the bright daylight in the glass-walled office suddenly feeling heavier, more intimate, as if everyone's breath had been stolen at once. No one noticed the spreadsheets still glowing on the screens or the city humming outside the windows. All that mattered was the quiet, unexpected closeness between two people whose lives were never meant to intersect this way, and the soft whisper that followed, so gentle it barely existed, yet powerful enough to change everything. If you believe that kindness can rewrite destinies, that second chances can appear in the most ordinary moments, take a second right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Spark. Your support keeps stories like this alive, stories that remind us humanity still matters. Ethan Morrell had learned to live with lowered shoulders. Life had taught him that keeping his head down was safer, especially after the morning routines that defined his existence. Every weekday began with sunlight creeping through thin curtains as he packed his 6-year-old son Noah's lunch with careful precision, folding napkins, double-checking the juice box, brushing hair that never stayed neat. The small apartment smelled of toast and detergent, and Ethan moved through it like a man balancing fragile glass, always aware that one wrong step could shatter the delicate stability he had built since his wife's passing 3 years earlier. By the time he dropped Noah at school and caught the bus to the corporate headquarters where he worked as a junior facilities coordinator, he already felt older than his 36 years. The building itself was a monument to success, all steel, glass, and confidence, gleaming in the daytime sun. Ethan often paused at the entrance, adjusting his shirt, tugging at a collar that never quite sat right, reminding himself he belonged there. At least technically. He wasn't an executive or a visionary. He fixed broken lights, restocked meeting rooms, cleaned up after people who spoke in millions and billions. Yet he took pride in doing his job well, because pride was one of the few things life hadn't taken from him. That particular day carried an unfamiliar tension. There was talk of an inspection, whispers of layoffs, rumors drifting through the corridors like dust motes caught in sunlight. Ethan felt it in his chest as he pushed his cart down the hallway, hands slightly trembling. His shirt was freshly washed but slightly wrinkled from drying on a rack overnight. He hadn't noticed the collar sitting unevenly, bent from years of hurried mornings and budget-friendly fabric softener. Across the building, Clara Whitcomb stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows of her executive office, the city unfolding beneath her in daylight clarity. As CEO, she was known for precision, for seeing flaws and fixing them before they became disasters. But beneath the tailored suit and composed exterior was a woman shaped by quiet losses of her own. Memories of growing up watching her mother juggle 2 jobs and still come home exhausted, collar crooked, smile forced. Clara had promised herself long ago that if she ever reached the top, she would never forget the people who kept everything running without applause. She noticed Ethan by accident, or maybe not by accident at all. Something about his posture caught her attention as she stepped into the hallway, the way he moved quickly to clear a spill, apologizing to no one in particular, eyes always scanning for mistakes. When she approached, he froze, heart racing, already rehearsing an apology he hadn't been asked to give. In the bright corridor filled with daylight reflections, Clara stopped in front of him. She didn't speak immediately. Instead, her gaze lingered on the small details people usually missed, the worn edges of his shoes, the faint exhaustion under his eyes, the collar folded wrong, pressing awkwardly against his neck. Without thinking, she reached out, her movements slow, deliberate, human, and gently straightened the fabric. The world narrowed to that single gesture, a simple act that carried the weight of recognition. She leaned closer, lowering her voice, making an observation that felt strangely personal, noting that he smelled different today, like clean soap and something warmer, something honest. It wasn't flirtation or power play. It was awareness, the kind that says, "I see you." Ethan's throat tightened, No one had been that close to him in years, not since mornings when his wife used to straighten his clothes before work, smiling in the soft glow of dawn. The moment passed quickly, but its impact didn't. Clara nodded and walked on, heels clicking away, leaving behind a man who stood frozen, collar fixed, heart pounding. Ethan finished his shift in a daze, replaying the scene in his mind, wondering why such a small kindness felt like oxygen after years of holding his breath. Change doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in daylight, disguised as routine. Over the following weeks, Ethan noticed subtle shifts. His supervisors spoke to him differently, with more respect. He was asked for input during maintenance planning meetings. Clara would occasionally pass him in the hall, offering a brief smile, nothing more, but enough to remind him that he wasn't invisible. At home, the change showed too. Ethan stood a little taller. He took more care with his appearance, ironing his shirts while Noah colored at the kitchen table. He began to believe that maybe his life was more than survival. Maybe there was room for growth, for dignity, even for hope. Noah noticed it first, asking why his dad smiled more in the mornings, why the apartment felt lighter even though nothing physical had changed. The real test came on a day flooded with sunlight when the company announced restructuring. Fear rippled through the staff. Ethan's name appeared.